Today we've got your full in-depth review on the giant Sigma 35mm F1.2. It's huge, it's heavy, it's magnificent. Let's get started. Here it is, my friends, it's the Sigma 35 F1.2. We're gonna break down this beast in everything that matters to help you figure out whether or not you should be considering it. Here's some specs to get you going, and if you haven't seen one of my videos before, my name's Stefan Malloch. I do a lot of photography and filmmaking news reviews and tutorials, so if you do enjoy this type of content, you like this video and it helps you out, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and join the community. Anyways, with that out of the way, I always like to say who I recommend this lens to, and this is definitely a professional lens. It's very big, it's very expensive, and it's going to be found mainly in a professional's bag. So having said that, let's dive in as usual and look at the build and features. So let's dive in and have a look at what's in the box. Now, like most Sigma lenses, you get a little bit of paperwork. With the Art series, you typically get a nice little case like you do here, and then you get the lens and the lens hood, and that's pretty much it. As you can see, this lens is not small. It's a beast. It's big and heavy. With the lens hood on, it measures just shy of 7.5 inches and 5.5 without. It also weighs nearly 2.5 pounds, meaning this lens isn't exactly travel friendly. But that's not why we buy this lens anyways. It's got an automatic manual focus switch, a customizable focus hold button, and a click switch which allows you to customize the feel of your aperture ring. From hard stops to a nice smooth movement. This is going to be great for you video shooters. The oversized focus ring is grippy and has just the right amount of weight to it. The manual focus experience is nice and accurate. On the front, you'll find large 82mm filter threads, as well as Sigma's proprietary coatings to help with ghosting and flare. On the back, you'll find a nice confident metal mount with a rubber gasket for confidence when it comes to weather sealing. Overall, it has a robust build and great features. It is a little big for toting around all day, but it is an incredible f1.2. I give this lens 4.5 stars when it comes to build. Now let's dive in and talk about the value of this lens. And this is kind of a tricky one because there's really nothing like it on the market. Coming in at around $1,400 to $1,500 US, this is not a cheap lens. Probably the most comparable is the Sony 35 f1.4 Zeiss, which is an incredible lens, but only a 1.4. It is a bit more expensive, but there are quite a few other 35mm on the market. Take the Samyang or Rokinon 35 f1.4 for example. Incredible value. There's also Sigma's own 35 f1.4 for considerably less money. There's also the native Sony 35 f1.8, much smaller and much cheaper, so we do have some options, but just not quite as magnificent. So it all comes down to your needs. This lens makes a statement in a lot of ways. Do you need a giant 35mm f1.2? Most people, probably not. But this lens, as you'll see here in a few minutes, is absolutely incredible in terms of performance. Does it justify the huge price tag when there is so much more on the market? Well, that's going to be up to you. For me, value-wise, I give this lens 4 stars. Now let's dive into where this lens really shines, and that's performance. First, we'll have a look at the autofocus. For what it is, it's actually quite accurate. That f1.2 is going to be really challenging with that tiny depth of field. It's definitely not the fastest lens, nor is it designed to be. But it's going to get the job done, even in low light situations, and it's going to do it basically silently. It's worth noting that it does suffer from some focus breathing, as you can see here as I play around with some manual focus. But what about image quality and character? I have to say that with this lens, it's really hard to not take incredible photos. It's a perfect focal length for environmental portraits. It's got an incredibly shallow depth of field, giving you beautiful background separation. The bokeh is just on the next level with its 11 aperture blades. Hands down, this lens is going to give you beautiful results at whatever you point it at. This is a beast of a portrait lens, obviously, but you don't need to be scared of going in and shooting the details either. As you'll see, it's razor sharp, even at its close focusing distance of 11.8 inches. This is going to allow you to get nice and close to your subjects, Just be careful of that razor thin depth of field. Let's have a detailed look at the sharpness and optics of this lens now. And as you can see wide open here at f1.2, there is some heavy vignetting and a little bit of barrel distortion, as you can see here. I'm going to use a profile correction here to show you the significant difference that this makes. Look at the difference that that profile correction makes. That is dramatic. I don't know if I've ever seen a lens that makes that much difference. Let's have a look at sharpness. The center of the image here, wide open, is nice and sharp. The corners, however, are pretty darn good for a 1.2. Not bad at all. Now, the trick here is actually getting the corners to be in focus, having that wall perfectly parallel to the camera, but it actually does a pretty good job. Let's stop down to see the differences here. You can see a little bit of an improvement when it comes to contrast. The corners are still not perfect. Center sharpness is not going to be an issue for this lens the entire aperture range. As you can see here, the more we stop down, the better it's going to get. Here we are at 1.6, 1.8, and now it's looking really good. Here down to 2.8, we can see that that vignetting has pretty much disappeared. Now stopping down even further, f4 is looking great. f5.6 is just phenomenal. Now f8 is going to probably be around our sharpest. And this is where we're going to find the most detail in our entire image. It's just an incredibly sharp lens. As we stop down to f11, we can see a little bit of that softness start to kind of creep back in, all the way up to f16, which is going to be our minimum aperture. Now still completely usable. Let's compare our f11 to our f1.2. And as you can see here, not bad performance across the board, but again, our best being around f5.6, maybe f8. As you saw, as far as vignetting is concerned, it's going to be really heavy at 1.2 and pretty much disappear at about 2.8 here. And as far as the distortion is concerned, that's going to be present throughout pretty much the entire aperture range. But again, use in-camera corrections or this profile correction to kind of clear that right up. As a whole, a marvel of engineering and an incredible performance optically. If I could describe the way this lens performs, it's just effortless beauty. Appropriately named, this really is a work of art. When rating performance as a whole, it's darn near perfect, and I give it 4.5 solid stars. So wrapping up, there's no denying that this lens is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary price, size, weight, performer, everything about it. I don't really take issue in the size or the weight personally. It's the price that I struggle with, because there's just so many awesome lenses out there that are competing. Now sure, they might not be exactly up to par when it comes to performance, but can you justify the difference in performance with added weight, size, and cost? That's going to be up to you to decide. As always, here's my personal pros and cons for this lens. If I were to rate it as a whole, I think it's a phenomenal lens overall, and I give it 4.5 stars. If you happen to be a subscriber, you also know that I like to rate things on a scale from never think about again to consider to definitely buy. And in this lens's case, if you are looking for the best of the best, if budget's not an issue, perhaps you're looking for an amazing, if not the best, wedding lens that I could ever imagine, I'd strongly consider this one. If you're ready to buy this lens, I'll drop affiliate links down in the description for you. And if you like this video and you want to see more just like it, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and join the community. I'll leave you with just a few more examples from this lens. And like always guys, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more pictures. See you next time.